So the first attempts to introduce salmon to Australia were back in the 1860s, but they weren't terribly successful. It wasn't until the 1960s, 100 years later, that the first fish were brought from Canada and successfully introduced. It's eggs from those fish that we brought to Tasmania, and thanks to the efforts of scientists right here at Taroona, we have the industry we have now. It was a very different setup from the very flash labs we have now. Most of the salmon were first grown in tanks outside what is effectively our tea room now. So I think we had 4 or 6 tanks originally out the front with 2 guys hand feeding on a daily basis. There you go. The salmon industry in Tasmania is developed from some very small beginnings, but some very dedicated people. Tassie salmon farmers still have some real challenges. The water here is much warmer than elsewhere in the world. That's led to some fairly innovative science. Science that's been taken up in recent years much more by our colleagues globally as climate change has become a real issue and they've had to contend with that warmer water. Understanding the environmental interactions of salmon farming is a key area of research to us. We have looked at the effects of salmon farming on the seabed and in the areas around it.
We're sending our van being grabbed down to the bottom to get a sediment sample.
So this information is just used to compare from normal sort of sediment and compare that to what we see underneath the salmon farms. So we're using these macroinvertebrates as a biological indicator of what's happening and looking at the health of the sediment.
There will be an effect, but so long as that remains localized and under the cages, it's not such a great concern. It's when it becomes more widespread that it really becomes an issue. So as a result, we have spent a lot of time looking at those interactions, at how the salmon farm affects the animals in and around the area where farming occurs. Things like the Magean skate, which is a very rare species of skate found on the west coast of Tasmania. And unfortunately, these days is in the area where there is that interaction with salmon farming. So that's meant that we are studying things like the distribution of the adults and how the fish respond to changes in the oxygen environment. This information is important so that we can work out the best way to manage the salmon farming activities so they can sit alongside the skate in the environment. The industry has continued to grow and expand into new areas, and our research has grown and developed alongside that. We've developed new sensor technologies to capture data at timescales and in areas that we couldn't have done before. We've even got sensors now that we attach to the fish so we can tell how they're feeling, well, at least what their heartbeat is telling us. Science and marine systems are complex. So often when people have concerns, the answers are not straightforward and not necessarily simple. As scientists, my entire team, we are really keen to be able to get the opportunity to explain that to people, to try and help people better understand those interactions. We know it's not easy for people to read a paper or a 300-page report. Sometimes it's just easier to talk to someone, and we are really happy to try and do that wherever we can. One of the things I've found is as we advance, technology moves on, understanding moves on, and so we should be able to refine what we do along the way. Doesn't mean what we did before was bad, but it can be better.